Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. One of the main reasons many individuals become interested in the psychedelic space is due to the opportunity there is for deep healing. However, what if there were ways to be able to have the ability to heal ourselves effectively and efficiently as if we were in the psychedelic space with no psychedelics necessary? Trust me when I say that I am as big of a proponent of these medicines as any of you. However, the truth is that most of us do not have the ability to connect with these medicines as often as we may like to. And even if we can, we may not be able to find the correct guides or education necessary to be able to maximize the ability of these medicines to assist us in our healing journey. And in today's episode, we will be diving in with one of my favorite souls on the planet, who is going to be demystifying the topic of energy healing and sharing his own personal story with how he became so passionate about this realm. He is the founder of Transcendence Healing, which is a beacon of hope and transformation that was born from his own journey of overcoming struggles and discovering the power of energy healing through combining his own experiences with modalities such as the emotion code, quantum touch, and yoga, with what he felt was missing from these modalities to empower those he serves to be able to put down the extra emotional weight they are carrying and pick up more joy, love, and purpose into their lives. So please, help me in welcoming my brother JP Boyd to the show. JP Boyd, my man. Dude, I am super excited to have you here with me on the show today. It is a pleasure to finally get to connect in real space with you, or at least virtual space, that being said. Like I said in the intro, guys, I met JP through the LUC, right? Through Level Up Collective, which is a mastermind we're both part of, hosted by Jeremy Griffin. And, I got to experience his Transcendence Healing, like personally. And it's been absolutely amazing because not only does it work really well, not only is it enjoyable, but for I know a lot of you that are also very busy and these kind of things, it doesn't necessarily take a long time to be able to get very high quality results from it. And so, JP, we're going to dive into all that juicy stuff, but I want to start with, asking you and inquiring so as to how you first became interested in, let's say, the other side of life, because what we're going to cover today, guys, is not just psychedelics, right? It's going to be what JP has been able to create in his life from the realms that could be described as psychedelic, right? And we're going to get into his experiences with psychedelics and things like that. But you guys always know I'm telling you that psychedelics are not the moon or sun, right? They're simply the finger that can point us back. And so what I would love to start with, JP, is, how you first found those fingers that can point you to a certain direction and what some of your experiences with psychedelics have been thus far.
Absolutely, yes. So I feel that the moment that really changed everything in my life, and I'll give you a little bit of the backstory, is for most of my life, right? I grew up in Panama. It's a really small country. I went to high school. I was a really shy kid. Then I went to college and I started as a civil engineer, and that was a freaking hard career. So for 5 years, I was extremely mental in my mind. I was just really overthinking a lot of the times, and I had almost this addiction to negativity. So for some reason, my mind, in a way to protect me from all of the things that I experienced when I was growing up, it was almost like it was always predicting things and making me hyper vigilant into the future. And this gap of being so focused in the future started to get wider and wider and wider. And as it got bigger, I started to experience more and more and more pain because I was going away from life. I was going away from being, right? From connecting with myself, from just accepting who I was being. And I was just extremely focused on the future. And it just felt like I was living a life that was a lie. It was almost like I was in this conditioning, in this automatic pilot, and I just felt really freaking empty, right? So that was from that emptiness, I felt like something deep within me. Know that life couldn't just be that, right? I was in college. I was doing everything that people tell you to do, right? Especially our parents. Go get the good job. Go be an engineer or a doctor. And I was like, yeah, this is the path. I'm going to work for the rest of my life. I'm going to work for 40 years. I'm going to retire. And I didn't knew that life was anything else externally, but also internally, right? Because at that time, I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate. I knew that I was my mind. Like I didn't know that there was a difference between my thoughts and my being, right? The space around the thoughts, right? The space that allows you to experience feelings and thoughts and all of these incredible things. That was the awakening that really led me to what I like to call the first day that I felt like I was living, the first day that I was consciously reborn as a human being. Because before that, I was like a human doing. I was just in my mind, in the almost like in the Matrix. I didn't know who I was because I thought I was my mind. And to give you the visuals of how that looked like, I picked up this book called The Power of Now, which you might be familiar with, or the audience listening. It's a really profound book. And I read it the first time, but because I was so stuck in my mind, I didn't understand what was really going on. There was this guy that was talking crazy stuff about how we're able to be the observer and not be like in our thoughts and not being that little inner voice that was really negative, because that's what was my identity my whole life. It was just stress, anxiety, fear. And I just thought that was normal, right? So when I read the book the second time, I had this experience where it was almost like I was sitting in a cinema and I saw this big white screen, and my presence, right, my being or my essence was just observing thoughts. And for the first time in my life, imagine 23 years of deep suffering with like a lot of stress and anxiety that was driving me crazy, right? And I'm sure you've experienced this as well. When you are in that state, you criticize yourself so much for being that, right? For thinking negative thoughts. You're like, wow, JP, how can you do that? How can you be so negative, and so on and so forth? So I saw this screen and the thoughts just were kind of in this white screen, and I was just seeing them. But for the first time, I was not my thoughts, and I had this freedom. It was this space that planted the seed of like, wow, that was a psychedelic experience, because I felt so much joy in my heart that I was like, wow, holy shit, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not all of this anxiety that I thought I was. I'm not all of this fear that I've shamed and guilted myself for so long. Holy moly. And from that point, it was like an inner fire was lit up in my heart. And that was the beginning of the fingers that were pointing to a higher truth, to a higher dimension, to a higher reality. And that 3 to 5 years ago was the journey that started my own journey into transformation, into healing, into really letting go of this momentum that the mind has in our civilization, and coming from thinking to being. And that was the introduction into this world that I then developed deeper and deeper.
Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show. Wow, JP, that is amazing, man. And it's really funny because one of the things we were talking about beforehand is cannabis, right? Connecting on cannabis and things like
Yes.
that. And that
Yes.
experience is extremely similar to the first one I had. I had one when I was 16 where I realized I was not my thoughts. I had no way to articulate what the hell
Ooh.
happened. I didn't know for years even what had happened, but it was like a foreshadowing, right? Like I had no idea how to explain it. I didn't even know what books to reference, right? But then when I was around like 21, 22, 23, those ages, I then got into a lot of different stuff, holistic health, things like that. And that's when I found Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, all that kind of stuff,
Wow.
So it's really funny to hear those similarities and synchronicities between our stories because that experience is 100% psychedelic. Like it's actually exactly what happens when we connect with psychedelics, or exactly what could happen. Of course, there's a range of different experiences one could have, but it's amazing when you get to experience those things. And I'm curious for you, like for someone out there right now who's maybe like, I want to experience that. What have you learned overall? And we're going to dive much deeper, and this is kind of a vague question, but what have you learned overall that if you could go back and talk to the version of you that was 21, 22, 23, what would you tell him in terms of wisdom, advice, etc., when it comes to being able to be a human being rather than a human doing?
Incredible question. Thank you. I would say one of the things that comes into my mind is telling my younger self that he doesn't have to rush, that he doesn't have to be perfect already, that he doesn't have to hide in achievement and doing to derive his sense of self-worth. And especially that deriving of doing, just doing, waking up so early, like at 4 a.m., doing a 4-hour routine to just feel good about myself was definitely not a nice place to be, right? So the main wisdom that I would say of this transitioning of like, what if I want to go from doing to being? It's just first, in a way, just sitting with yourself and realizing that you're not in a race against time. You don't have to achieve everything that you see out there in social media and the people that you look up to. It's such a deep peace that can come into your life when you are just able to accept every ounce, every fiber of your being. Like, I want to invite you to sit down and just write down a full page of all of the incredible achievements that you have done, who you are, right? If you look 6 to 12 months from now versus who you are today, you're going to find so much happiness and so much joy versus comparing, like, how long do I have to go? Like, what is the next mountain that I need to climb? Because that was the addiction that my younger self was hooked on, right? That was the everything. Like, how much can I achieve? How much can I put into a day? But the essence of it is that I was operating out of lack and scarcity and fear, right? Out of separateness, out of being incomplete. And that's the biggest lesson, because from that state, everything changes, right? If I knew back then that I was not broken, that I was not incomplete, that I didn't need to prove to anyone my essence, my love, my freedom, my being, then everything would have been so much more chilled, so much more wholesome, right? Because the pace, the draining of your energy from that stress, from that needing to go, right? That caffeine, the coffee, the work, all of these things, is just in a way a reflection of how society is conditioning us, right? So if you find yourself that you're in this never-ending race against time, that you feel that you're always rushing, that you feel that you need to be somewhere else than where you are today, that's a clear indication that you need to look inside yourself and love. See yourself in that mirror and smile. Tears will come down through your eyes. Forgiveness, acceptance of yourself. And then from that, as a reflection, you'll have the acceptance of the present moment, right? Accepting brings so much wholeness into the heart. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I would give back to my younger self and to anybody who's in this same journey, maybe in that stage as well.
Oh man, that is so beautifully articulated and perfect. And it's funny because I literally feel like you're speaking about my exact journey, which is really funny when I do these podcasts. And of course, like law of resonance, right? We all resonate with each other, but it's again a psychedelic experience, right? To realize how many people have gone through very similar things, right? Like I would say my biggest challenge, I mean, I've had quite a few different challenges in different areas, but if I could kind of put them all in one category, it would be right around that, right? Like, first of all, not knowing what I didn't know, which at the end of the day is many of us in the world, right? Even us right now, we don't know what we don't know. So when I was, raised, I grew up in Boston, right? So very aggressive work environment, right? And I remember that there was like a very interesting shift around when I became 20. Like all of a sudden it went from like I could easily be to like, oh, there was no more being. And when I really looked into it, it was like, oh, all of this pressure that I'm putting on myself, there's no one to blame, right? Like I could say I was influenced by society, but I wasn't a victim to it, right? Like I chose to do it unconsciously, but I still chose to do it. But it would take me years. I mean, I'm still coming out of that. And what I've found now is that there was a certain time in my life, I actually have a similar story to Jay Griff, right? Like I didn't hold a lot of jobs. I always just found ways to be resourceful because I never believed in that. But at the same time, when I did have jobs, I would be paddling upstream, right? It would feel like work and effort. It wasn't until my latest awakening when I was 28 where I started highly optimized and really started getting into all this stuff, at a deeper level, like embodying it all. Also the pandemic, which was fantastic just because I needed some time to relax, that I really started realizing how upregulated I was, and the analogy I give, and I'm curious what you think of this too, because this is how I've always thought of it is, if you have a snow globe, right? A snow globe that you shake and it looks all cool when the snow's in there, right? Most people, right, including myself, I won't project, I'll say I, right? So I used to think that the whole point of a snow globe, was to shake it up as fast as possible, right? And that was the only way to use a snow globe or utilize a snow globe, right? Metaphorically. What I then realized over the last 5 years was how beautiful it is when you actually let the snow globe settle. Because when it's all shooken up, you can't see anything in there, right? You can't see the beautiful image that's sitting there that's underneath all of the static and all the speed from the snow going all around, right? So when you allow it to settle, you're actually able to see the beautiful town in there or whatever the, snow globe has in it, right? But that's the analogy and metaphor I've used to describe like the difference between being and doing. It's not that it isn't fun to shake up the snow globe every once in a while, but don't forget there's a beautiful image in there too that's just as beautiful as when you're on, right? So that brought me that, your story really brought that up when I heard it. It's really cool, man.
That's an incredible analogy. I love it. And I feel that it clearly gives you the vision of how that looks outside of yourself and inside, right? Because when we're all shaken up, it's almost like we can't stop to smell the roses. We can't stop to see the mountain that we've already climbed, right? Because it's almost like I heard this quote, which was incredible the other day. And it was like, when you're so focused in the future or in the mountain that you need to climb next, you no longer realize that what you've prayed for your entire life is already here. And I was like, wow.
Yes.
That was deep, because that really connects with the analogy of the snow globe. And it really shows you why the present is a present, right? It's the gift of life. And that's, as we'll go deeper into this podcast as well, this is one of my biggest pillars. Like, this is really the foundation of how I grew in all areas of my life. It was presence, right? The medicine of presence is incredible for the life that we live, for any experience that we have, even for psychedelics. Presence is your most powerful weapon to not only embody, right? But something really incredible that you said is, we need to integrate, right? We need to integrate the experiences. We need to go from learning to experience, right? To wisdom and embodiment. And that is something that I'm sure we can both relate. of how, like, when you hear lessons or listen to other people talking about it, you're like, yeah, I kind of know that, but then like it's such a different feeling when you actually embody that. And I feel that we can both invite the audience and everybody listening to practice that embodiment, like daily, the presence, every single moment. Life will always bring challenges to test you, to see if you actually integrated the psychedelic experience, for example. That is the end result that we're looking for. And I'm curious to give it back to you to see what's your take on that. Because in my experience, every single journey that I've gone to of like reaching higher levels of just personal growth and like being more embodied, life always sends you bigger and bigger tests because it's just like taking you higher into this journey of self mastery and ultimately ascension and becoming your higher self. So I would love to hear from you that it's really cool to see it how it integrates with the psychedelics as well.
It's essential. And like, I love speaking about this because as someone who connected with many psychedelics before I knew any of this and got a lot of great results, but the thing was that they didn't really last. Like, you know, again, like you'd have an afterglow, you might have gained awareness, right? And the analogy I give for this is it's kind of like having sex with someone that maybe you think is attractive, that you enjoy, both parties are enjoying it, but afterwards, you know, there's not really a connection, right? Like, versus having sexual relations with someone that you're truly in love with. That's the difference to me as someone who's gone through both things of connecting with psychedelics before I understood presence, before I understood like inner awareness or any of these terminologies, before I had really embodied like being able to live from the heart, from 4D consciousness, you know, any of these things. And now being able to connect with psychedelics with those tools and also with the discipline to be able to, and the courage to be able to ask the plants the things that I'm challenged over, right? Because that's typically why I connect with these plants now, especially cannabis. It's based on shadow work, right? Like I want to get more aware and closer to those parts of me that for whatever reason, right, programming and patterning wise, I feel shame and guilt around, you know? And so for me, being able to have the presence, being able to, you know, tap back into the breath, being able to down regulate, all of these things have allowed the psychedelics to really become what they're meant to be, which is simply a tool that allows us to move brainwave states, open up awareness, you know, open up curiosity, and then know actually what to do with that stuff. Because before I would have these really mystical experiences that a lot of times were fun, a lot of times were very challenging. But then I would come back and I had no idea of what even integration was or any of this stuff. So I had beautiful experiences, thankfully. I mean, I had a couple that were definitely a little terrifying, but, you know, I had a lot of beautiful experiences. But what ended up happening was, and I talk about this often on the show, and I think you'll resonate, you know, based on where psychedelics are right now in popularity, you know, like the challenge with these medicines is nothing to do with the medicine themselves, but it's to do with the left brain. So if someone is living in a state of discomfort, you know, which that's most of the world right now, discomfort, right? Because they're being challenged as the consciousness of the planet is evolving. A lot of people are starting to be sucked into that higher frequency and they got to purge whatever's in there, right? So for a lot of people, it's very challenging right now. It's been challenging for me, right? So I can imagine the average person it's going to be challenging for, right? So being able to see the psychedelic movement and see so many people that maybe you're feeling this discomfort, right? This just like lingering discomfort coming from trauma, the shadow, etc. They don't know how to handle it yet. Then they're going to do psychedelics, let's say, right? And let's say in a perfect world, they connect with cannabis or they start microdosing, or maybe they even have a big journey and they end up feeling some sense of better in that journey. Well, if you're coming from the left brain, what your brain is going to correlate is that, oh, I must need more of that thing more often to feel better, right? So they're missing the point of it, right? That cannabis, these psychedelics, et cetera, they give you a glimpse of what is possible beyond your patterning and programming. So when you come back, the objective is, why can't I access that in my typical state? Because now I've experienced it. I know it's possible. So what is standing in the way, right? So a big part of like what this podcast is based on, like why I'm so excited to chat with you, because you have like this beautiful modality and way to articulate it that is so easy to understand. and is so practical for so many people. Because JP, I talk about often, right? Like, I think one of the challenges in the spiritual realm is that the spiritual realm, like, again, we love, let's say, meditating for an hour or two at a time, or doing breath work every morning at 5 a.m, right? Like, these are things that we've found fun now because we've been doing it long enough, right? But for the average person, right? Like, are we really going to expect them to go meditate for an hour when they don't yet realize what meditating can do or what the point of it is? Even if we articulate it to them, like, what I loved about your stuff is you can go through it in 10 minutes and feel a huge change. And for someone that doesn't know why they would want to prioritize this stuff, that can be the experience, once again, right? That allows them to go, oh, now I get it, right? So I think that's where a lot of people are with psychedelics. And that's where presence has really helped me in all of these different things, right? Being disciplined in my spiritual practice, being in a hermetic lineage, like all of these different things have helped me to where now, with psychedelics, I barely need anything to tap me into that higher frequency, because I'm living on such a higher frequency now that, like, literally I just went to Electric Forest, and of course I always engage in, a couple experiences when I'm there. And it was funny because I hadn't gone in 4 years. And so different man, different river, right? And so I went there, and like, it was so funny. I mean, I could microdose some psilocybin and feel amazing. I could be completely sober and feel amazing. And it was wild because the last time I was there, that was not the case, right? Like, I still had feelings around like, oh, I can't access these things in my sober state, so I need these things to be able to access it, right? So it was just an absolutely wild experience, man. But that's what I've experienced when it comes to, these deeper truths of life, presence, our soul being online, living heart forward, being in 4D consciousness, whatever you want to call these things, and how they relate to psychedelics. So I appreciate you asking, man, because it's fun to go back and forth and dive into all of these subjects, man, because this is how I learn. It's like I learn from other people best. So yeah, it's really amazing, man.
Yeah, I love that. And what really stood out from what you just shared about this whole story of before and after going back is that is really where your power surges, right? When you can go back and be naturally high on life. I never thought, I'm sure we can both relate to this, I never thought in my life that I would be able to, like, just be so open, like so happy and joyful without having to smoke a joint, for example, right? After, like, during college, probably smoked like 4 to 5 years. And we obviously, I'll say to also correct that, I did that to access these states of laughter and happiness and joy. But that was dependency on that. And I didn't know that I could, through my presence, right, through really connecting and dropping into my body, that I could access these states of just being happy, just because I'm alive, just because I'm excited about life, and I'm super thrilled to be me, right? And to be in this moment. And that's why I feel presence is such an important tool, because it gives you access to this natural high where you don't need anything, right? You don't need alcohol. You don't need anything to take you there, because you're sourcing it from within. And when you source it from within, you are powerful, my friend. You become a master in a way, because you no longer need anything outside of you to feel incredible. Love, relationships, money. You're sourcing all of those chemicals, all of that beautiful freedom from within. And I feel that's what we both love to see in others, sharing that love from within us and just helping everybody else who's walking the path to, like, also be able to unlock it for themselves, right? So that they can be empowered and free. And that was one of the most incredible realizations that I've had in my life. And it did come down to presence, right? Because when you go off a psychedelic experience, you go back to what I call in a way, the matrix of your mind, right? What's really stopping you from experiencing this joy, you might ask, right? It's actually the conditioned mind that's running your life. And this is what we call the ego, right? In the spiritual world as well. When you have the ego tricking you into believing that you are it, with triggers, with negative emotions, with imposter syndrome, with perfectionism, with stress and anxiety. When you say my anxiety, right, my perfectionism, that's a clear sign when you are very much identified with that part of your mind. And that's what really gets in the way of experiencing that beauty that you were talking about, right? So when we really embody presence and we make it the main priority of our life, we become so powerful and we can see through that in a way that that dark night, imagine that you're in a forest with a lot of fog and you have this beautiful flashlight, right? That you can shine through to see your path. And that's what presence really is, right? It really allows you to go beyond the fog or beyond the illusion or the confusion that we live in. And then it allows us to be in the light, walk the path of the light towards our truth.
Yeah, man, that was perfectly illustrated. And the analogy I've always felt for this too is like we operate as a lighthouse when we can come from presence, right? Because we're heart centered. And that is it. I mean, what does it do? It helps bring other people home, right? Like, you know, because again, even if someone doesn't know how to articulate or they may not even understand spirituality or anything, you know, a lot of this is innate, right? It's not thought about, right? Like, you know, again, you meet someone who's heart centered, right? And coming from joy, you just want to be around them. You don't really know why. If you know this stuff, you'll start to be able to like understand intellectually why. But again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? Like you don't need to understand intellectually, right? Like, you know, again, it helps, right? To be able to articulate and explain to other people. But again, one of the biggest challenges I think is, you know, for me for a long time anyway, I would, you know, learn things intellectually and be like, whoop, I now understand that. Where at the end of the day, knowing versus realizing are two different things, right? Or knowing versus embodying, right? Knowing is being able to define something intellectually. Realizing or embodying is actually having direct experience from which you can teach from and articulate in your own unique ways, you know? And so being able to, you know, experience this power to be that lighthouse for others. I mean, there is nothing I have found more contagious than joy. You know, the lineage I'm a part of, they always talk about how joy is our innate state of being, right? Like it's not an emotion, it's actually our innate state of being, you know? And if you look at kids, right, like they are in a state of joy and they haven't had an ego form yet for people to tell them that certain emotions are undesirable, right? So what they do is they're running around in a state of joy. They fall down, they get angry, they let their emotions out completely freely because they haven't learned yet not to. And then they go back to joy, right? Like, you know, one of the things that I jog a lot of my clients' memories with, especially men, because, you know, typically men are the ones that have the biggest challenge getting in touch with emotion. You know, I tell them, I go, do you remember a time when you were a child where you would maybe not get your way? You would then cry and eventually you still wouldn't get your way, but you would just be cried out and you'd be happy to go back to life. And they'd be like, yeah, that was really weird. I'm like, what if I told you you could still do that? And that is like, you know, an experience of presence, right? An experience of allowing, right? An experience of all of these things that we articulate here, you know? And so I'm curious for you, JP, like as you were starting to figure all of these things out and have these beautiful experiences, like how did Transcendence Healing come about? And I'd love if you could explain to the listeners exactly what Transcendence Healing is. Guys, I've gotten to experience it. It is epic, but I'd love to, you know, have JP explain it.
Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah. So what I'll say to kind of just close the loop on the presence is that presence is our natural state, as you said, right? It's not like we're becoming someone else. That's something that I didn't know for the majority of my life, that guys and girls, this is our natural state. It's not like we're doing something different or like going to another path. This is literally our home. Like it's our birthright to be free, to be peaceful, right? All of this mind stuff of the anxiety, the stress, the overthinking, the self-doubt is the layers of conditioning that we release as we go deeper into our truth. But I feel it's so important to articulate for all of us that presence and joy and peace is our natural state of being. It's our birthright, and it is our responsibility to claim it. And we have the power to do that. That's something that I didn't know before. I didn't know I had the power to do it, but we all have, right? We all are the same potential, right? We can all actualize it. We can all reach there. It's just about tapping into that courage, into that inner fire, and knowing that you can blaze through those invisible walls of shadows and fears.
Mm. That is amazing, man. I just wanted to jump in real quick and just say, like,
Yeah.
being able to have that inner awareness, right? And being able to experience it.
Mm,
Cause it's like, for me, I've always thought about it kind of like a mantra when you're meditating. Like when you first start trying to meditate,
mm,
you barely even remember that you're supposed to be doing a mantra. It's hard to catch yourself thinking because it's been so unconscious, right? But the more you start
mm.
meditating, you'll be like, oh, thinking back to the mantra, oh, thinking back to the mantra. So I imagine it's very similar with this process, right? At least it has been for me, and I
Yes,
imagine for most people it will be, right? Like the more that you practice presence, the more that you practice coming back to the moment, the quicker and faster you'll be able to
exactly.
catch yourself when you're not living from that. It's like a muscle. It's like anything, right? So yeah, I just wanted to throw
Hmm.
that in there. It's really cool.
Literally, yeah. It's like the mental gym. And then one day
Mm.
you wake up and it's your natural state. And it's amazing. I feel
Yes.
that's what we all deserve. Right?
Yes.
So
100%.
absolutely. So to answer now and go back into the realm of transcendence healing, it's a
Mm.
really beautiful, really, really beautiful journey. And I feel that the 5 years that I've been in this journey, it has all led me, like all of the pieces of the past, all of the trauma, all of the limiting beliefs, all of the nights of suffering, right? All of those feelings, they were literally all stepping stones into finally coming back full circle and in a way being inspired to create transcendence healing, not as JP the personality or my human form, but just by allowing the divine inspiration from the universe or from my higher self to come through and bring this system into the world, right? And you've experienced it. I know deep in my heart this is like meant to be the messenger in a way of like bringing this into the world. The beautiful thing about transcendence healing is this, right? You've probably experienced, I've probably experienced, we all probably experience once we go into our inner healing journey, into the shadow work, into
Mm-hmm.
spirituality, into personal development, we always have these core wounds or these core fears that for some reason they can't seem to go away, right? It's almost like they're just stuck on repeats and they just keep coming and coming and coming and coming. And you're like, what do I need to do to be free from this, to transcend this pattern, to be able to rise? And that was the struggle that, in a way, planted the seed for me to create transcendence healing, which I'll explain the what it is, right? But we need to build this little backstory so that we understand what it really does. And in essence, the system of transcendence healing, which is a holistic system for personal development, holistic healing, and spiritual growth, it's very groundbreaking in the technology that it uses because it gives you that key to really transcend those deep seated patterns and core wounds and core fears that for some reason it seems that they've been stuck with us for lifetimes. And that freedom just blew my mind away. Like I cried so much because I've been looking for that. We all look for that moment where we can just wake up the next day and it's like freedom. No no thought, no emotion around that pattern that we've been stuck with for our whole life, right? And for me, to give you a little bit more context, the majority of my life, it was two main things. One, rejection,
Mm.
judgment from other people. My expression was completely shattered from the way that I grew up in a household when my parents were my dad, he was like a military style dad, and I couldn't really express myself. So I had tried so many modalities, shadow work, meditation, somatics, breath work, and they're all beautiful. They all lead you exactly where you need to go. But then there's always deeper levels, right? Deeper levels to your being, deeper levels to your transformation. And for some reason, my soul or my being were just called to go deeper. Like I was always this deep desire in my heart, knew that I needed to go deeper, right? So once I reached the point of first going from meditation to then yoga, to knowing that trauma gets stuck in my body, then I knew that I had to go deeper, because at that time I had already mastered presence, right? But when I spoke to the camera, I felt like shit. I felt like a little baby, like a little kid that was just really afraid to be seen and heard. And that was my biggest core wound. And it kept coming back no matter how much inner child work I did. And I was like, man, how do I find a modality that actually gives me this? So I literally looked in a lot of different places and I didn't find it. And then one day I found this beautiful book that introduced me to the world of energy medicine and energy healing. And it took me kind of back to the root, right? I know you mentioned before the call how a lot of the work that you do is changing the brainwave states, right? And then leading people into this deep subconscious reprogramming of their beliefs, their patterns, and their identity. And I love that stuff. And I was like, okay, we need to go deeper. Let's find the key. I don't know why. I just kept looking. And I went super deep into the world of energy healing and energy medicine, because when I was reading these books, it's called The Emotion Code, by the way.
Oh, dude, I love the emotion code. Sorry, dude, I've done a lot of work with the emotion and body code. So yeah, keep going. I just was like, that's a crazy synchronicity.
That's insane. That's literally the book that opened the door to energy medicine and energy healing in my life. And it's amazing, right? Because it's such a beautiful journey. It gives you the power to know that you're your own healer and your own guide. And it's like, holy moly, I have in my power inner technologies that can release energies that are at the root cause of the issues that I'm having. And so I went deeper into energy medicine, and my personality or my being, what I love to do is like that. This is probably my superpower, and how really transcendence healing came to be is like I go so deep into that world. Like I study all of the best authors, all of the best systems. I'm such a curious person. I love to adventure. I love to experiment. I see myself as a creator, as a scientist, as an adventurer. And I'm just always testing, refining, improving. I love innovation. I love bringing the future of personal development and healing into the now, right? And that's what transcendence healing is. So as you can imagine, I spent like a year and a half testing, experimenting, like trying different potions, different recipes. And I started with the emotion code. Then I went into a book called Quantum Touch. That just blew my mind, because I feel that I need to share this, because it is a psychedelic experience and it will give people the understanding of how freaking powerful we are. This is what really led me to create Transcendence Healing. And let me know if we're good on the timing and everything, so that I don't stretch it out too much. But from here, we'll go to the creation. Beautiful. Perfect. So with Quantum Touch, this guy, the author, he was like, through the power of your heart and with your intention, you can create these rules that if you write them down and you turn it into an icon, you can align the hips of a person without touching them. And he said, what's really curious is that most people don't have balanced hips. They have the right one. It's pretty much out of alignment. And I'm really curious, as I said. So I was like, I was at that point super open-minded. The skepticism in my mind like passed away a long time ago. So I was like super open. I'm like, let's do this. Let's see if we have this power. So I went to my whole family, my sister, my grandma, my dad, and my brother, and I measured both of their hips, and all of them had the right hip higher than lower than the left one. And I was like, really interesting. I was really trying to push down, but I couldn't. So it was like this. So I followed the instructions of the book. Extremely surreal experience. I close my eyes, right? And you've done transcendence. So what we do is we close our eyes, we do heart focused breathing, and then we see an icon or a symbol that's going to represent the healing that we want to command to the subconscious mind, right? So I can write any symbol, almost like I'm writing a line of code, and I can command. That's the power that we have. I can say to the subconscious mind, I want you to go and identify the 50 top limiting beliefs that I have related to money, related to relationships. And then through the technology of transcendence healing, we activate that through our energy, and then that command gets executed within us automatically. So you can chill, you can relax, and in 10, 15 minutes, whatever rules we program in that transcendence healing program, you will receive. And I'm really pragmatic, I'm really practical. The cool stuff is that by using muscle testing and the universal truth test after transcendence healing, you can verify for yourself if the healing worked. So every single time, clients get really empowered, because it's not like this woo-woo stuff that is all energetical, but then there's no proof that it actually works. This is like, you do the work, you relax, there's nothing that you have to really do. And then at the end of the session, you can verify it, I can verify it, 30 people can verify that you no longer have that subconscious limiting belief or that trauma. And that's a beautiful experience that I'll share a little bit later on. But to come back to finalize the story of this crazy quantum energy healing, I did this program and I was setting my intention to align the right hip with the left hip of my grandma. And I was sending my heart energy into her. And 1 minute passed only. And I opened my eyes and I go to my grandma and to my sister then. And I measure the hips. Imagine my grandma's like 88. So it's a perfect subject. I go there and I'm not kidding you that I went and both hips were perfectly aligned. All of my family. Before they were like this. And then for some reason that I still don't comprehend the depth of how much power we have, I was able to affect in a positive way the reality externally through my own use of consciousness for the betterment of humanity. That's why we also need to know, right? If you're just trying to do selfish actions, you're not going to be able to shift reality or to influence on that outer reality. Just imagine how much that blew my mind. That was what created Transcendence Healing. And I was like, wow, if I can do this, imagine how much deeper I can go into my own system, right? And then to transition from there, this is what created this deep desire to unify and create a system that could be used universally. And that's where I really started to understand our energy anatomy, our biofield, the human energy field, right? The chakras, I'm sure we're all familiar a little bit at least with the chakras and the aura. So what I discovered with Transcendence Healing, that really is the work that you've experienced, and the essence of it is that it allows you to target directly your energy centers, and inside your chakras and your aura is where I found we have stored our deepest programmings about ourselves, like our deepest limiting beliefs, and also all of the inherited trauma that we've been carrying from lineages. Because when we are born, we also inherit, energetically speaking, all of the toxic traits and unhealthy patterns from both our mom and our dad's lineage. And those are, without a doubt, the deepest, most dense patterns that we have to break through. And so Transcendence Healing, in a way, allows you to almost take a journey back in time. It drops you back into alpha or theta brainwave states. So it's almost like we're opening up the door to the subconscious. Once you're in this really beautiful state where you're focused inwards, you get to experience a really beautiful blend of subconscious reprogramming, energy medicine, and quantum healing. And what that means in simple terms is that you can sit back and your subconscious is going to identify automatically all of the imbalances that are related to whatever you're working on the session, right? So let me give you an example to ground the explanation. Let's say, for example, a person is working on a limiting belief that says, I am not safe, right? That belief is going to be stored in the root chakra the majority of the time, because that's the energy center that governs our psychological functions of safety and security. So it's really cool to see the communication and the relationship between the subconscious mind and the energy body. But the beauty of Transcendence Healing is that it allows you to release instantly like hundreds of these little imbalances or like landmines that are associated with that belief or that trauma. And that's what really gives you that permanent, profound effect that it's so hard to find on other modalities. And that's why you're able to experience true freedom from that pattern, because it's almost like you go through a whole body scan, and let's say you have 300 imbalances related to that limiting belief. The technology of transcendence healing swipes clean. It's almost like this really cool purifying system, or this flame that transforms any impurity within you associated to that session, right? So you can apply it to relationships, to wealth, because we all have blocks inside our energies, inside our subconscious, right? Related to money, related to self-worth. And so you can kind of really pierce through with this fire, with this energy that is able to go down in the deepest level of your being, and then shift you from within, from the level of your identity into your core beliefs, into your feelings, your thoughts, and ultimately your behaviors. So it's like a full clearing of your house. You're literally creating that space to plant anything that you want. And you make sure that there's not any hidden pockets of fears or imbalances that are there. So after that's done, you get to keep that result for the rest of your life, because you've cleared from the deepest level of your being, which is energy, all of those blocks that are preventing you from being your highest potential, from connecting with yourself. And that's the journey of transcendence healing, transcending the pattern. And the last thing that I'll say to conclude everything is that is in essence transcendence, right? When you transcend something, the analogy that I love to use is that becomes your new floor in a way, right? Before you had that pattern that you were trying to break, and it's almost like you're just hitting the ceiling, but you can't seem to transcend it. And then by using your own power, right? Transcendence activates your self-healing mechanisms within you. You transcend that completely towards the lowest place that you can go. It becomes your floor, right? So you cannot go lower than that, because it's your new average, right? Your new foundation, where you won't go below that, and you're ready for the next level. And that's what for me means to transcend something.
Wow. That is absolutely.
Appreciate you sitting on that one.
Dude, I mean, that was a beautiful explanation, man. And, it's interesting that emotion code as well. Like, so many people don't know about that. And that was one of like the, not first things, but I got into it heavy about 3 years ago. And I worked with this practitioner named Jen. She was amazing. And she did a couple other things infused into it too. But that was like one of my first peeks into like, oh shit, this stuff really works. And I did like, I think around 20 or 25 sessions with her, like over the course of like 6 months. Wow. Like I went aggressively into it, and it was awesome, dude. And at the same time, I was also doing, I don't know if you ever heard of brain integration therapy, BIT for short, but that's like dude, that one blew my mind. That's like kinesiology, David Hawkins consciousness, work. And then also like just a very interesting method. Like they'll be sitting there, and they'll be having their hands on certain parts of you and like tapping their feet certain times, clicking their tongue, like weird stuff. That's really cool, of course. Like I love it, right? But cool. Again, like why I love yours is because it's so easy to understand like how to do on your own. Like it's just practical, and again, like nothing against the other modalities, but I got to go somewhere to get brain integration, right? With emotion code, it's like, it's a little bit of a learning curve, right? Like this was just so simple and not convoluted whatsoever. Like there wasn't, anything like, I'm sure it goes deep when you have the full explanation, of course, but you don't need to understand like what every aspect is to have it work, which I think is really cool, especially for like the population at large. That's like, what do you mean quantum realm, and things like that. Whereas I'm like, yes, I get exactly what you mean, and so it's really cool, man, because what most people fail to understand about quantum mechanics is the ability to heal non-locally, right? And this is like, with biogeometry, this is one of my favorite systems I use and utilize for this. So everything I'm wearing with the, the wearables, all my cube right here, right? Like all of this kind of stuff is all based on quantum technology. And it's really cool because what you can do is you can take this certain pendulum they call the Jedwaj pendulum, and you can take a picture of someone, put it down, and then put that pendulum on the certain area of their body that you want to heal non-locally. And so I imagine that's exactly what's happening with your modality, right? It's like non-local healing, right? Yeah. Like when you were talking about your grandmother and being able to align her hips with just your intention, like of course that stuff works if you understand what
Mm.
quantum mechanics is and who and what we truly are, right? And this is like why I've loved, the LEC so much, because they talk about it from a wealth perspective. I've always talked about it from a spiritual perspective. And again, it's all connected, right? So it's just really cool
Yes.
to think about different ways to understand like the true nature of who and what we truly are, which is not meant to be
Mm.
bogged down with all of these challenges, traumas, these kind of things, right? Like this is a
Mm.
lot of what I feel has been lost almost entirely from
Yes.
the past, right? Like, sure, we have
Mm.
iPhones and we have, cars and all of these things that, albeit are amazing, but at what cost, right? What have we
Yes.
forgotten to be able to have this stuff, right? And for me, I'm like, we can have our cake and eat it too. It's not one or the other. It's a yes and, right? And so, man, I absolutely love that. And, I'm curious for you,
Mm.
JP, like, as we start to wrap up here, like, where can people find you? How can they access Transcendence Healing? Because I'm telling you guys, I have done at least 4 or 5 of your different meditations, and I've done them each a couple of times. Rachel has also done them, and we've both found them extraordinarily powerful. And again, guys, not just powerful, but practical, like fun. Like I don't have
Mm.
to feel like I have to really do anything to allow this to happen. It's
Yeah.
actually a subtraction process rather than an adding process.
Mm.
And you can get them done in
Yeah.
as little as 10 minutes, right? So, guys, like for anyone listening, what I love about this is that it's going to be harder for your ego to come up with a rationale argument as to why you don't have the time for this. When someone tells you got to meditate for an hour a day, it's easy for the ego to go, we don't have the time for that. But 10 minutes, come on. Do you really not have 10 minutes? So, JP, where can people find you, connect with you,
Yes.
learn more about Transcendence Healing and everything you offer to the world, man? Where can they find you?
Beautiful. Yes. So everything can be found in my website that we recently launched. So we're very excited. It's just
Congrats.
transcendencehealing.co. That's it.
Beautiful.
And you have so many resources. I literally just launched a 7-day free course of Transcendence Healing because we're so committed to this mission. Like we didn't even make it opt-in. Like you can go to transcendencehealing.co/fundamentals and you just see it on the website. And you can go through a 7-day course in a week, and you can get to experience transcendence healing with me on demand, and you can learn the basics, right? I teach you about a little bit about energy medicine, and just get to know yourself on a deeper level and connect with this modality and see if it resonates. So transcendencehealing.co is where you can find everything. The community, the book that I just recently launched is next level, so transformational. And that's where we are. And then on Instagram, just at John Paul Boyd, which is my full name. So JeanPaulBoyd. And I'm sure you'll link it also in the show notes. But those are the main 2 things. And I would love to connect with you there and hear your experience with Transcendence. So
Dude,
that's what we have.
that is
It's
amazing.
amazing. I'm so excited for more people to really just share it with other people and like hear the stories of people transforming, because I want to just say like the power of not only of transcendence but more importantly of ourselves. Like I've single-handedly seen people reversing ADHD, people reversing those traumas that you think you'll live for the rest of your life. Like I can tell you with so much confidence and with so much truth and love from within my heart that you literally have the power to transcend, heal, and transform anything. Literally any disease, any physical, psychological condition. It's mind blowing how much power we have as co creators of our lives. And we just need some inner technologies and some keys to teach us how to do that. And then from now on, for the rest of our lives, we get to keep that gift and feel so powerful and so empowered that these technologies are coming back to the world. So I wanted to leave you guys with that so that you can also in a way grounded and see that it can be used for so many applications.
Wow. It is absolutely amazing, man. And you know what I love, most about this too is there's nothing more exciting to me
Yeah.
than seeing people that are charged from within and have a mission they are
Yes.
passionate about. Like, guys, if you can't tell already, like, I mean, JP is, an absolute master of what he does, but he's also extremely passionate about it, which I think is like very important because, at the end of the day, like people wear it when they're really passionate about
Yes.
something. And I think that it's very valuable, right? Like along with the incredible healing you're going to get, just being around people that are mission centered and they really like are on point for why they came to planet Earth. It's going to help
Yes.
you just being around that energy to click into what your full purpose is, you know, and this purpose that we each have, it continues to open up, you know, like it's not like a one and done thing, right? Like Eckhart
Mm.
talks about, right? We have an inner purpose, which is to wake up. Our outer purpose becomes wherever that inner purpose leads us to, right? So being able to see JP and feel his energy even through Zoom or Riverside rather, of being able to feel on point, being able to have done the work to be able to figure out what his power zone is, like that stuff does not come easily, yet it can be simple, right? And what JP is a master of, along with everything aforementioned, is creating simple processes to allow you to not just understand what we're talking about, but to experience it.
Mm.
Because again, right, like I think I
Mm.
speak for both of us when I say that we don't need more intellectual learning. Like that's great, but why it really is great, and the only reason it's great, is to back up the experiences we have. So take advantage of JP's offer, go have more experiences, and then come back to this
Mm.
episode when you want to learn how to articulate it. But the most important thing is go try it, guys, you know? So JP, I have
Yes.
one last question for you, man. And that question is
Yeah.
this, right? So let's say someone listens to this
Sure.
episode and they're excited to
Yeah.
check out psychedelics and transcendental healing or transcendence healing in their own life,
Yeah.
right? What
Yeah.
is the one piece of advice you would give them to allow them to use proper discernment in choosing whether or not psychedelics in particular are right for them at this moment in time in their lives?
Beautiful question. What I would give as an advice is to sit down, quiet your mind, quiet the outer self, and tune into your heart and receive that guidance, right? It's not like you're taking guidance, you're receiving. And this will take you further than any advice that anybody out there in the world can give you, because you have that inner technology that can guide you always. And you can save years of anything, of pain, of slowing down in life. Like, I feel that that's the advice that I always go back to, because it's so simple, pragmatic, and practical. I would sit down, quiet my mind, and I would start to be curious, to ask questions, right? So to give you guys not only the advice, but how to do it, how to experience it, as you said. You can sit down after you've done some breath work or you've relaxed a little bit, and I would start to ask questions either out loud or in my mind. And I would just be really focused and put my full attention in my heart and see if when I ask a question, I get excited, if there is some tingle sensations in my heart, right? Sometimes people, when it's a yes, they feel like their heart kind of going up a little bit. But when it's a no, the heart kind of like dims down its energy. And that's when you can differentiate when you're getting an answer that is meant for you versus an answer that is not for you, right? So if you're getting a no in these paths, then you can confidently move to the one that you're meant to be, and then you eliminate confusion. What if? What am I supposed to do? You have that answer within, and that's all
Yes.
you have to do.
Dude, that is amazing. Because again, guys, if we connect with psychedelics, but we don't know how to utilize and really like explore the potential of what these medicines have by,
Yeah.
you know, employing tools and technologies like exactly like JP is talking about, then we miss out on some of these things. And also we end up thinking we need more psychedelics to get there, right? Which again, they're
Mm.
all different tools that lead to the same river, right? So I highly recommend that you guys do exactly what
Mm.
JP just said. Tune into your heart, you know, really dive into this stuff, guys. And, you know, guys, this
Yeah.
has been absolutely amazing. JP, thank you so much for coming on. I hope to all you guys, you enjoyed it. Make sure you check JP out. Take a trip down to the show notes for this episode. Give him a follow on Instagram. Check out his YouTube. He's got amazing content on there as well. And we will see you guys next time around. I hope you all have the best day ever, to infinity and beyond. Much love, ladies and gents. Peace.
Much love. Yeah. And I want to say the journey, really, if you want to dive into it, is in the book, right? It's over 200 pages. Like, if you want to go on a journey and really know all of these tools that we've learned about presence, about energy medicine, the book is the most incredible gift that you can give to yourself.
Oh, that is beautiful. Guys, was that an epic deep dive into the realms of energy healing? overcoming personal struggles, and creating the lives of our dreams, or what? Out of all of the many things I love about JP, his ability to wear his heart on his sleeve and act as a beacon of hope for those struggling with similar issues to what he has dealt with is one of the things that inspires me most about him, his journey, and his mission. For any of you looking to contact JP to begin creating the life of your dreams free of emotional baggage, make sure to check out the show notes for this episode, where I will be laying out all of the easiest ways to take action on that today. JP, thank you so much for taking the time to come onto the show and share your wisdom with the listeners and me today, for having the faith necessary to turn your struggles into your strengths, and for being a source of inspiration for the world at large to charge their batteries off of. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.